in a nutshell in terms of how they have not given Steph who he has needed over the course of time besides KD, and now finally getting Jimmy after a lot of swings and misses. Like they've been just grabbing whoever and been like, "Yep, they're here's a Stephen Curry's brother-in-law."
Have
Like
they
you want to
needed have
like
they needed to do that though? When you draft as well as Golden State did, and you have Clay, Steph, and Draymond, do you have to make a splash in free agency? Because when they did land KD, we were all like,
I
"But
mean,
why?"
it was two chips. It was like it
That's
was.
true, but like, why?
So when you draft as well as them, you typically wouldn't need to sign a big free agent. However, as well as they have drafted historically, I do not think that they either haven't developed their talent the best or they've shipped their best talent out. Right? Like
Also, too, though, like the GM that was responsible for putting that together, what's his name? He's on ESPN now. Like he's no
Bob
longer in there.
Myers.
Yeah, he's no longer in the front office.
Right.
So I think, that's where some of the difference comes into and why you are able to land like a Jimmy now. Because, like you said, as of recently, those draft picks haven't panned out, starting with James Wiseman, I would say.
Yeah. That's where it
Uh,
started.
yeah, but
Because it
So
could have been LaMelo easily.
yeah, like Wiseman didn't pan out, and I don't think that's the Warriors' fault, nor is it Wiseman's fault, really. Like it just didn't work, right? So that didn't work out. Poole did work out, but then he got shipped out, for his reasons. Moody has been the player that stayed around the longest. Am I sold on Moody being a part of whatever the future is after Steph? No. But as for right now, he's still a relatively integral piece.
Kuminga's Lord, that he
They,
showed why he wasn't getting time. Like
mm,
that,
yeah, I
like
mean,
sad to say, like he looked lost on a lot of different spots on defense too.
who
Like,
Moody?
no, Kuminga, like hit a couple shots like here and there, but like you could just see what wasn't in any sort of flow offensively. Not seeing guys like I don't know, he didn't look like what we were promised what that jump was going to look like. Like I don't know why he doesn't just see what Jimmy does out there and try to assume said position where he just dribbles to spots, looks for guys. Like he looks like he has like no purpose on the court.
I think that's extremely unfair to Kuminga. And I think for me, that speaks to my point to how the Warriors have handled some of their talent in recent time, right? Now I feel bad. I want to double check this before I get into it because I don't know exactly which year Kuminga was drafted.
But it's like I feel like he had a solid rookie campaign, showed
Kuminga,
promise that second year, on his third year, third fourth.
uh,
And
2022.
I don't mean to say that
He
like
did great
he's
though.
some sort of horrible player.
okay,
I just think that like he just has lost his role and his understanding of what he brings to that team. Where it's like they play those other guys because they fill a slot or play a role better than what he does. I just feel like he's not.
I think that's
There's no.
revisionist. I think that's revisionist because we saw a stretch of time where Kuminga was clearly supposed to be, well, he was clearly ascending, right? Then he got hurt. So when you get hurt and then in the midst of getting hurt, Jimmy comes in, the role is lost. It's the same way with Milwaukee, Andre Jackson Jr., Kevin Porter Jr. comes in, he's benched, right? Like, is there a
Yeah,
reason he shouldn't be playing? No, but that's the decision of the coach, right? So if Ajax was put into a game right now, he'd probably look a little bit out of sorts, even though we all know what he brings to the table. Obviously, he's a different player than Kuminga, but I think what
that's where
go
I
ahead.
feel like that's where like just I don't think that Ajax would necessarily like because they are different players. Like he's just gonna come out and defend. It's not like his shot is going to be that like he's gonna miss his cuts. Like there, like if you look at some plays last night, like he's cutting like mid court and like getting in passing lanes, like and it's going off his face. There's
Again,
dribbles in the paint where he doesn't see like an interior player where he has a layup open and just like
so
and I get
I'm
he's been
asking,
sitting out
I'm
a
asking,
couple games, but it's a couple games too.
nah, it's not the same, bro. What I'm asking you is think of Kuminga, he got drafted in 21, right? Think
Yeah.
of what's happened since 2021. Like they've been in flux. They had the championship run where he was still young. I think that might have even been his rookie year. So like
Yeah.
expectations are relatively low, right? But after that, ever since the championship run, you had Clay. We didn't know what was going to happen with Clay. And in those last 2 years, between injuries and him being a little bit disgruntled, his role started to look different. You trade Poole out, right? So we
That's
saw
where he gets more touches in that year, 22, 23.
Yeah. So like we saw his role start to ascend, and it made sense that they were giving him the room to grow into the player I think we all know that he can be. But I just think we cannot solely fault the player and minimize the impact that not the coach directly, but like how your role may change throughout a season. Think of how many people thought that Kerr should have found a way to fit Tatum into some type of rotation in the Olympics, right? You can argue whatever you want, but the idea is that if you have a player of that caliber, you figure something out. You find some minutes somewhere. Obviously, the Olympic roster is different, but Kerr also had a point where he was playing everybody on the roster at the beginning of the year. Am I surprised that changed after the trade and once they got closer to the playoffs? No, but I think the way Kuminga looks has way more to do with how he's kind of been pushed out the rotation than it being like he's just not showing up. Like, I think that is the reason. I think he's lost his confidence. I think
Mhm.
that he doesn't feel like he belongs there. He doesn't feel wanted. And I think any player, especially a young player that feels like that, this is what this looks like on the court, looking lost, looking out of rhythm, almost trying to play not to mess up. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's where that's coming from. And I think that's unfair to Kuminga because you go from playing, then you don't play. He might have only played last night because of Jimmy, right? Like, because of Jimmy getting injured. So it's one of them things where we're playing as much as he did, So I don't know. I think Kuminga has become a non-factor, unfortunately, for the Warriors because of all this. But I think that will be to their detriment because I don't see how you have somebody with that type of athleticism and skill set and not figure out how to use them or not figure out how to incorporate them in the lineup where they can be maximized. But I also think that's why he'll probably leave in the offseason. So
But see, I don't. I trust Steve Kerr because before the Olympics, and like you said, the Olympics is different. But before that, he did say certain teams, certain situations calls for different rotations. So
yeah,
just because we didn't see Kuminga here against Houston, doesn't mean we're not going to see him in the second round.
this is
It
true.
just maybe
But
it's not
then
coming for his
to
number.
to Qual's point, like what is his worth of playing if like he's been played out of the rotation, now he's this broken player. So whether it's like the matchup or not, then it's like what's the point of plugging him in if like he's not going to be the Jonathan Kuminga that we know to be that X factor defensively and offensively.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, and it will be curious to see what happens because if they do get out of this round, I mean, we've seen it like players to Ashley's point, as much as Kaminga might feel like a broken player right now, maybe it is another series where he can have that impact. Maybe it only takes one game for him to see it and to feel it again for that confidence to come back. We don't know, but I do think that's something the Warriors will be looking at in the offseason regardless because I think from what we've heard in terms of the reasons he's been pushed out of the rotation, I don't think there seems to be a coming back from that given the current roster construction, for sure. And if Jimmy is staying, let Kuminga go make his money somewhere else. If another team is going to pay him to be more of an integral part of whatever they're doing, but we'll see. I think like we predicted, this series will it's at least going
It's
six.
going to come down to half court and
Yes, it's
Jalen
at
Green
least
being
going six.
bipolar.
Wait, who's bipolar?
Jalen
Jalen.
Green, like we said, like
Oh,
he's going to either figure it out in the half court and he won't. And it's like this is the tale of how it's been all year, where it's like he's there and he's not.
yeah.
And it's just like 7 to 38 points. It's just like Chuck had great analysis on this, where it's like you need to average 20 in a normal way. You can't be fluctuating like that in a playoff series. It's not winnable basketball.
Agree. So we shall see.